Let's expose the most brutal torturing method used in the ancient. 1. Elephant crush. Crushed by elephant started in South and Southeast Asia, maybe because they had lots of elephants around, and they become a little too friendly. They weren't friendly for good, though they used the elephants to step on the body of criminals to crush the entire bones to death. Sometimes they would even tie blades on the foot of the elephant's feet, so the person would be crushed and sliced at a time like some garlic. Break their rules, they will break your bones. Literally. Elephants weren't trained for circus like this days. They rather had trainers they call mahout that train and control them to not kill the victim right away. They would slowly step on the person, carefully trying not to kill them and slow their death to make them suffer even more. Seriously, what is with these people and slow deaths? People of the time would gather around to watch a person get stepped on like a cockroach, and they would actually enjoy it. It wasn't just a punishment they used to punish criminals, it was also a form of entertainment. They had no movies or humanity back then. I mean, who needs a movie when you are living in one, a horror one, actually, so I don't blame them. Aren't you terrified enough? Coming up number 2, Pear of Angush. Let's say Mr. X was accused of stealing, heresy, or let's just say both cause either way he would die. And his wife Mrs. Y was accused of witchcraft. Let's say since that's what women were accused of very often. Yeah, crazy couple, but what's crazier is yet to come. Now these two crimes were no joke during medieval times, so these fellas would be tortured by the Pear of Anguish. Witches would be interrogated to confess if they know other witches, if they had a pact with the devil, or if they caused harms to others. Would have been great if the witches had their brooms with them, so they can escape from what's about to come. Pear of Anguish was medieval torture device that was made from iron and other metals and shaped like the fruit pear, but not the as pleasant. Like I said, it was used for interrogations that goes like, want to tell us what's going on, or want to have this new fruit in one of your holes or all? Yeah, so it could be inserted into the mouth rectum, or you know what is the other hole. Yep, right there. Okay, then it would expand when cranked, causing unbearable pain. It would explode like a balloon inside the person. It wasn't just a physical punishment, it was also embarrassing as hell. Someone got to see you naked to insert it and hear you moan, but not from satisfaction. Too bad human rights didn't exist back then, they wouldn't have let it slide. The worst part would be the probability of the machine being already used on a previous criminal. They wouldn't simply throw out a perfectly good torturing device or care about its hygiene. That would sound like luxury. So rip for those who had it in their mouths next to the person who had it down there. Ooh, gross. 3. Gibiting human cage. If you lived in the medieval Europe, you'd be familiar with the gibiting human cage, which is also called hanging cage. But fortunately, you are not from the medieval times, so I will tell you what it is. As you can guess from its name, it involved hanging something which is dead criminals' bodies. A smelly corpse left to rot outdoor, so everyone can see it like it's some statue. Why? Well, it was aimed to teach the people of the time to not mess with the government or committing crime. Murder, bribery, or assaults weren't the only ones, but also stealing sheep or even tea would lead to this punishment. I don't know what the hell is a tea doing here, but mess up with these rules and your body would decay in public. You'd be humiliated even after you die. You wouldn't even be buried. You would be hanging like a piñata, except you wouldn't be filled with candies or look pretty for the eyes. You'd stink like crazy and be left to decay for years. And the public will learn from you. I'm sure moms of that time would advise their kids their shit together or they will end up in that cage. Ouch. This madness, however, ended at 1834. The last man to be executed was James Cook. How unfortunately do you got to be the last person? Wow, this is sick. Number 4, Scavengers Daughter. The Scavengers Daughter, an ancient torture with a fancy name. What it did to people wasn't as fancy though. It was designed to suffocate and compress the body while the person is in a curl-like position. They would keep on pressing the body until the person tells the truth. They squeeze the truth out of you. It was used to interrogate people and make them confess crimes. If truth don't come out of your mouth, your soul definitely will come out of your body, or your blood literally would sometimes bleed from nose and ears like a ketchup bottle since they were squeezed like crazy. They compress till confess. Now the criminal may think think I'd confess whatever they want to know and set myself free. But no, that's very stupid of them. No wonder how they ended up in this scavenger's torture thingy. Confession doesn't actually guarantee freedom. It might even end up causing worse punishments. What's worse than this, though? Don't underestimate these ancient people. They were really creative with these things. To summarize, while the Scavengers Daughter may have been the ultimate party trick for torturers in the 15th century, it's safe to say that these days, we don't need as much stretching, so let's leave the gruesome acts in the past and stick to less painful pursuits like binge-watching our favorite shows. 5. The Obliet Dungeon. The Obliet Dungeon torture was a punishment in which prisoners were trapped in a deep cage with one entrance and one exit only. It would be so narrow, so sitting down or kneeling were impossible. I'm sure the claustrophobic ones would die just from the feeling of being suffocated. They rest would stood till they starved to death. They didn't have the golden chance to a quick death. They were treated like a dead people though. They were both ghosted. They were just ignored all alone. Not alone, actually, previous criminals' bones and skulls kept them company if that counts. Worms and rats would also be there to make them feel welcomed. Psych, they just want to eat them alive. Now let me give you a second to guess where these cages were located. Yeah, go ahead, take your time. On a desert? Iceland? Underwater? Of course not. Well, the cages were usually built in a castle, so they would hear people partying outside while the worms and rats starts to party on them. Now tell me, do you like this punishment method? This torture, unlike the others, weren't physical. It was psychologically damaging. People would actually go mad after being left in the dungeon all alone. Being left alone and isolated from people and the outside world is awful, even if you are the most introvert and antisocial person alive. Since we are social beings, we need attention and interaction with others, and free from claustrophobic cages. Okay, now I'm telling you, it is even getting worse. Number 6, slow slicing. Knives cut. Hurts no, actually forget knife cuts. Paper cuts hurt like crazy. A tiny single cut on your finger stings like hell. You just sliced your skin, but still it wouldn't feel pleasant. Cutting one's skin is this painful. Imagine how cutting off muscles or organ would hurt. Criminals of ancient Chinese would know. Slow slicing is a penalty for prisoners in ancient Chinese. The process would be tying the person and intentionally cutting its body parts slowly, making sure he doesn't die too soon so he can suffer longer watching himself get sliced up. And his organs would be pilled up right in front of him so he could lose his mind watching his own body falling on the ground. Crimes that would cause this cruel punishment were murdering one's own parent, plotting against an emperor, or even starting a rumor. These kinds of punishment would make prisons sound like heaven. It would make us think, did people actually do this stuff back then? They don't call it the Dark Age for no reason, I guess. 7. Scaphism. Committing crimes in ancient Persian would make you a perfect dinner for these tiny monsters. In ancient Persia and other cultures, there was a punishment called scaphism. Prisoners would lie in a sealed boat where their arms, legs, and face would be sticked out. They then would be force-fed and covered with honey and milk, so they would attract insects. This is when the party begins for the insects and worms. Starting from the head to the toes of the victim, they'll start dining till the person dies. It would be a slow death that will take 2 to 3 days. The cruelty of this and other ancient punishment was the slow, agonizing pain that will make you miss your death. They won't kill you quick, rather they'd slowly torture you to death. Number 8, boiling to death. I bet everyone at least got burned once, right? It could happen when you accidentally spill tea on yourself, or when the oil your mom heated to cook suddenly touches your skin, or the water you wanted to shower with is a little too warm. You name it. Now imagine feeling that burn all over your body. It's a whole another level of pain, right? That's what would have happened to you if you were a criminal in the ancient times where a lot of crazy punishment out there. But hey, lucky for you, you are not. Boiling water, oil, molten lead, wax, or any liquid in a gigantic kettle they'd immerse the poor prisoners in till they die. Being accused of any serious crimes, criminals of ancient time were punished by getting boiled to death. This punishment was highly practiced in Europe and Asia. I wonder who came up with this cruel punishment, but they definitely knew the pain of getting burned is the worst kind, although there is no specific name for the person who invented it. Historical record states it began in the ancient civilized Roman Empire. Turns out Rome didn't only invent Roman numbers and calendars, but this crazy punishment too. Some says it started to widely get used in medieval Europe and other parts of the world for serious punishments. Research states that it become legal practice and societal norm. It's like us saying bless you when someone sneezes. We don't know who came up with it, but we still say it. But luckily it came to an end by the 18th century as human rights evolved. Last but not least, number 9, rat torture. It is a cruel punishment that originated from medieval Germany, was a barbarous way of punishing criminals. Serious crimes such as committing murder would result this penalty. Now you might wonder, how would this tiny creature be used to torture people? This is how the punishment goes. First, the person would lie on their back. Then they will be tied so they can't move or defend themselves. Then hungry rats would be caged on top of their abdomen. The rats weren't only hunger-driven, but there would also be hot charcoal poured on the cage they are trapped in. The rats in the sudden heat shock wouldn't hesitate to rip the flesh of the victim aggressively to save their worthless lives, causing the unfortunately victim feel the agonizing pain of being eaten alive. Yes, they would eat the criminal alive, that's how sharp their tooth and nails are.